Hey there, creepy peeps. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, welcome back. If you're returning, let's talk about all the books I read in March. Okay, so I read quite a few things in the month of March. Not because I was quarantined or anything. I still have to go to work, but it was just one of those months. I read a lot, so we got a lot to go over, so let's get into this. Of course, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Creepy Book Club pick for March, which was Night Film by Marisha Pessl. I'm probably saying her name wrong. So this book follows journalist Scott McGrath, who is investigating the mysterious death of Ashley Cordova, daughter to an even more mysterious cult filmmaker, Stanislas Cordova. McGrath teams up with two strangers and they get more than they bargained for once they start digging into the life of the Cordovas. So this was a really fucking awesome read, I have to say. I know at least one of the Creepy Book Club members listened to this on audiobook, and I haven't heard back yet on how this book reads in audio form because there's a lot of mixed media in the book. So throughout the book you'll have like these like images or like website pages that are part of the investigation. To me, that really added to the book, and it made you feel like you were in McGrath's shoes, like you're in, like it's from his point of view anyway, but it makes you feel like you're investigating as well. And it's really cool too, besides just getting a description of what these articles look like, you actually get to see for yourself like what these things look like, and I thought that was really cool. And like I said, it really added to the atmosphere of this book for sure. I loved the characters, actually. I loved all three of them. Like I said in the summary, Scott teams up with two strangers, Hopper and Nora, both who, you know, have their own reasons for wanting to investigate Ashley's death, which throughout most of the book they are assuming that it was a death and not a suicide like the media painted it to be. And because the filmmaker Cordova is so mysterious, they think that maybe there was some like sinister, or they start to think supernatural elements that came into play with this. I'm not going to give away what happens at the end because I honestly feel like it's just a real treat to read this book and to go along with the story. I will say, like, especially how they start off the book, like right after the prologue, it's right into this like slideshow article about the filmmaker Cordova, and you're immediately drawn in to his mysteriousness because of this. And it really, I'll say it really kind of puts your blinders on which is cool. It really helps to like put you in Scott's shoes, so you're genuinely just being taken along for the ride, and that's the best way to read this book, I think. Is the twist all that unique? No, the rest of the book is. I mean, that's the way most things are anyway. Like, nothing's truly original anymore. It's how you take these cliche tropes and stories that we all know and embellish on them, like you add your own thing to it. And this is brilliant. Marisha Pessl, again, hopefully I'm saying her name right, I'm not sure, did a fucking fabulous job. I thought the story was so rich and so engaging. Because I had some time today and I had already finished everything I read in March, I am filming this a day or two before March is actually over. So in the spirit of obviously giving all the Creepy Book Club members their due time to finish this and write their reviews, I'm going to go ahead and add on their reviews of it right now. Just be Vicky from, well, the future for me. So I'll cut to that right now. Hi, other Vicky here to share the Creepy Book Club members' reviews of Night Film. Ignore the tapping that you hear. That is the bird that keeps attacking its reflection in my window. Okay, so I think a few of the members are still reading this, which is fine, but it is April now, so and I gotta edit this video, so So we have Peyton, who wrote, wow, the ending twist was definitely one that I had a suspicion about, like a disorder or some sort of medical explanation, but I had really wanted to believe the devil's curse. The ending departure of the characters was a sad moment, and I had wanted there to be a reunion when he went to the island, but he had started the investigation alone. I guess he finished it only. This book is fantastic, and I'm excited to read more Marisha Pessl. Sovereign, deadly, perfect. 5 out of 5 for me, I think. So far, even because we discuss the books in chunks, like chunks of chapters or parts. But so far on this one, this book has been overwhelmingly positive. Every single discussion about this book has been overwhelmingly positive. Not that people can't like it, but I'm just saying everyone's really loving it. Natalie, okay, I have a lot to say, but I don't know how well I can sort through my thoughts. She didn't think she was going to be able to finish it, but she felt so deep in the story that Cordova was constantly on my mind alongside Scott. Yep, it's definitely one that even when you have to put the book down to go do something else, you're still thinking about it. Layers of detail Marisha Pessl put into this book is astounding. Anyone else want separate books for the making of each film? Yes. I know I will be rereading this a few more times to truly pick up on everything throughout, although not for a while. My brain needs to rest after that whirlwind. Absolutely. The evolution of Scott from someone who is strictly fact-based to embracing the supernatural was brilliant and believable, in line with where his investigation takes him, and then to flip it and make you question what was reality, what was real or imagined, or what was staged. I was fully there with Scott in the notion that he somehow was actually in a Cordova film. So was I. I wanted that to be the case so bad. I guess that is the mystery of Cordova. Is he real? Is he a piece of art, a myth? Who or what is he? I hope that Scott's life continues on the path that has started at the end of the book, and that he keeps his friendships with Nora and Hopper, and he continues to be the dad that Sam needs. The ending could go either way, but I certainly hope he doesn't get caught up in Cordova's crazy life any further. Nora and Scott were great additions to the team and served to be extensions of Scott himself, both seeming imaginary in their own way, floating in and out as they pleased. That's a really good point too. A lot of people were pointing that out throughout the book, that like Nora and Hopper seem to be like extensions of Scott's personality, which was pretty cool. I mean, we all loved it so far, and I'm sure as more people chime in here after the fact, it's just gonna be positive still. Again, if you don't like it, that's totally okay, but yeah. I can't remember who suggested this. It might have been Sean, Nocturnal Horrors, because I know he really loves this book and he's in the group. So if that was you, Sean, that suggested this, you nailed it, dude. Okay, back to other Vicky now. But yeah, it's a 5 out of 5 from me. This was fucking fantastic and I loved it. Okay, now going in order of what I read in March, with the exception of Night Film, of course. I picked up Fierce Fairy Tales from the used bookstore around. These were all, I mean, I still work in a bookstore even though all this is going on. I don't know why I feel the need to mention this, but I purchased all of these before. Social distancing and everything, so I didn't go put anyone in danger to get these books, I promise. This is just a collection of poems and short stories that take the traditional fairy tales that we are all familiar with and flip them on their head. It's pretty straightforward, just, you know, a lot of short stories and poems. It's got a lot of that, what I think is classified as like internet poetry, I think, in here, which I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of, but I don't know. I don't dislike poetry, but sometimes I have a difficult time with it, and I think maybe a lot of people might also. It's not really like an uncommon thing. So it was good though. I liked it. I feel like it's hard to judge poetry. Like, I don't know how else to like tell you about it. It was a 4 out of 5. They were good. The next thing I read was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This book follows Pippa, a high school student who chooses to investigate the death of Andy Bell for her capstone project. Pippa's town was quick to accept that Andy's boyfriend Sal was guilty of the crime, but Pippa isn't so sure, so she enlists the help of Sal's brother to help her uncover the truth. This was another one that kind of had a few like mixed media bits in it. I don't know if you can really tell on there. It had a few like mixed media bits in there, and they have sections also that are like transcripts of interviews that Pippa does, and just her log. She keeps like a log on I was gonna try and find an example, but now I can't find one really quickly, of her like writing her notes and like transcribing her findings for the project, which I think, again, kind of like Night Film, helps you get into Pippa's brain, and it's like you're her and you're investigating with her or as her. This was good. Like this, I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads because the story was really good. I liked that. I mean, like, obviousthen, as you would imagine, Pippa is right, and there is way more to the story than Sal killed his then girlfriend and then killed himself. So I liked the story. I really liked the story and where the twist ended up taking it. I feel like there was maybe not like a missed opportunity, but I feel like there could have been something a little bit more there about the race politics, I don't know what to call it in this book. Because Sal is not white and he's a dude. So I feel like, you know, in society, that's kind of 2 strikes against you at this point. Part of why Pippa is investigating this is because her town, like when they found out about Andy's death and how Sal killed himself, they were so quick to just be like, well, obviously Sal killed this poor white girl. Nobody looks any further into anything because it's just so obvious that he did it, right? I feel like that part's kind of just glossed over when there's just very, I mean, obviously there's some inherent racism to that. Like not from the author, I'm saying like in this story. Before anyone thinks I'm not calling the author racist. I'm saying like that was something I feel like that could have been explored a little bit more and wasn't. Also, Pippa as a character, I feel like for a protagonist, she was the most one-dimensional character I've ever seen. I feel like even Ravi, Sal's brother, who is helping Pippa with this investigation, he's not even the main character, and I feel like he has more depth to him than Pippa does. Pippa is literally like, her only characteristic is that she is like a mega studier. She's just one of those like overachiever students, you know what I mean? And it was just so one-dimensional. Like that's literally all you get to her character. So it was a 4 out of 5 for the actual story. I loved that part, and the twist was really good. But if I was judging it just based on Pippa's character, it'd be like a 2. And then really quick, because nonfiction books I feel like are sometimes harder to talk about than poetry books, at least in terms of me liking them. We'll get to that later. But I read Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers by Mary Roach. Basically, the title says it all. Mary Roach goes over all the crazy and interesting things that cadavers go through and how those things have advanced science and medicine as we know them today. Really cut and dry. It's just, I mean, not cut and dry, but you know what I mean. So like each chapter is something different. Like Dead Man Driving is about how cadavers are used in making cars safer and in figuring out how people get injured in certain ways in car accidents. Cannibalism, that's in there. There's a whole chapter just on heads alone, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, it was really interesting. This was part of, I forgot to do that last month, didn't I? I was forgetting to mention how these apply to my reading challenge. Damn it. I'm doing a reading challenge, the Pop Sugar reading challenge, and a lot of these books apply to that. Damn it. Okay. Well, really quick, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. It satisfied the challenge prompt to read a book from an author in her 20s. Holly Jackson was born in 1992, just like me. So the mean, she's in her 20s. I mean, she's my age. And then this, Stiff, was part of the challenge to read a book about a subject that you know nothing about. Well, science and medicine in general, I know nothing about, let alone cadavers specifically. But this was a 5 out of 5. I learned a whole lot about dead bodies, so. Next thing I read was The Outsider by Stephen King. This was a really simple reading challenge prompt, just to read a book with an upside down image on the cover. So there we go. This book follows the investigation of a heinous crime supposedly committed by one of Flint City's most popular and loved citizens. The case, however, gets weirder and weirder as evidence surfaces that proves this case isn't as cut and dry as the police thought. So yeah, this was actually, it was really interesting. I really liked the story. I haven't watched the show. I mean, I'm going to now that I've actually finished the book, but definitely gonna watch the show now. And it'll be interesting to see maybe what like little clues and Easter eggs I pick up on now that I know the end. And I'm not sure either if I think the season just wrapped on this. I don't know how far they make it into this story, but that'll be interesting to see. I liked the story a whole lot. The story was really cool. I don't want to give anything away, really, but you know, whatever, we'll talk about it. I liked the kind of doppelganger thing going on, and this idea, I guess, kind of a changeling a little bit, like in a very literal sense. It's an entity that changes its form. It can change into anybody, like it tends to pick a marked target. I do feel like the story kind of dragged in some places because like really it feels like this much of the book is them fighting the monster and the rest of this is the investigation and all these other characters. And I'm not gonna lie, they kind of figure things out relatively quickly. I feel like it's a lot of the backstory for all these characters that kind of gets in the way sometimes, which isn't abnormal for Stephen King. It wasn't on the level of it where it was like flashbacks within flashbacks or anything like that, but yeah, I feel like it kind of dragged in some places, so it might end up, you know, I'll be able to see once I watch the show if that works better in show form, or maybe they'll kind of snip out or make more concise some of this stuff in here. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because, like I said, some parts of it dragged, and also, I mean, I wasn't unaware of this, but somebody really needs to tell Stephen King that being overweight is not a personality trait. It's just a physical characteristic. So that's all I got to say on that one. Next thing I read was All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders. This satisfied my reading challenge prompt to read a book from an author who is trans or non-binary. I'm just gonna read the summary from the back because it's difficult to explain. Childhood friends Patricia Delphine, a witch, and Lawrence Armstead, a mad scientist, parted ways under mysterious circumstances during middle school. But as adults, they both wind up in near-future San Francisco, where Lawrence is an engineering genius and Patricia works with a small band of other magicians to secretly repair the world's ever-growing ailments. But something is determined to bring them back together to either save the world or end it. So this was a weird book. As you can see, it's not super long for being in the sci-fi and fantasy section. Not that all of those books have to be like door stoppers, but I feel like a lot of them are because you're doing a lot of world building. And this does take place in more or less modern times, but there definitely are mentions of like pieces of technology, that's what I'm trying to say, that make it very clear that this is more like supposed to be like a near future sort of thing, not precisely right now. Yeah, this book is really hard to describe. It's like I liked it, but at the same time I kind of didn't. That's why it says a 3 out of 5 on my Goodreads, but for whatever reason Goodreads doesn't let you do half stars, so it's really a 2.5 out of 5 because yeah, some parts were just weird. I feel like it's like sometimes the character decisions just kind of came out of nowhere, and I feel like it was more or less just to move the plot along. And that's it. The way that our author writes, Charlie Jane Andrews, the way that she writes is, I don't know. I liked it and I didn't. I feel like it was more just her writing when it comes to moving the plot along. I feel like sometimes things just kind of came out of fucking nowhere, and it was like you're getting whiplash. Like, it's not being like taken along for the ride. It's like you're being taken along for the ride, but playing that game of crack the whip where you're on the very end. So you're just like being whipped around. That's what reading this book kind of felt like at points. So yeah, it's like I didn't dislike it, but it was weird. I feel like this would make a really good show. I feel like this kind of like strangeness and quirkiness would be really suited to like a television show. It's really interesting to read though, because there's a pretty clear message about science and nature and taking care of the planet. So, I mean, if you like that sort of thing, I like that sort of thing. So I would definitely recommend you read it. It's a weird one. I wouldn't not recommend that you read this. It's definitely something like you should read it for yourself because it's weird to describe. And then finally I read Gold Dust Woman, the biography of Stevie Nicks by Stephen Davis. This I used for my reading challenge to read a book with either gold, silver, or bronze in the title. So Gold Dust Woman, there you go. This was the book I was referencing earlier when I said that it's hard to describe nonfiction and like poetry books that I liked, but not something like this, because we're gonna have a mini rant. I wrote it on my Goodreads. If you follow, this would have been a 5 out of 5. Like, if I could judge it just based on the fact that it's Stevie Nicks and I really like Stevie Nicks, it'd be a 5 out of 5, but it was a 1. Really quick, I learned a lesson about reading biographies here. This is the first biography I've read that wasn't an autobiography, so written by the actual person that it's about. Like, you know, it's by Stephen Davis, it's not by Stevie Nicks. I learned my lesson now to check the back of the book, which I didn't think I needed to see if this was an authorized biography or not, because I read this whole thing, 320 pages of this story about Stevie Nicks, to find out that in the end that this was an unauthorized biography. And then, I mean, the author was kind enough to share his sources for everything, which basically you could find out everything that this author wrote about in this book from Google. He also got a lot of his information from a book he wrote like 40 years ago-ish. Fleetwood, My Life and Adventures in Fleetwood Mac, which is a biography that Stephen Davis wrote about Mick Fleetwood, like in collaboration with Mick Fleetwood. So that one was obviously an authorized biography, but the author kind of gives himself away. Hold on, I marked the page. When he gets to the point where he's talking about himself, he just refers to himself as the writer. And he was following the band around on one of their tours while he was writing this book about Mick Fleetwood. And he writes here, one night Stevie Nicks asked Mick about the writer, Stephen Davis. Everyone was talking to him. People were spilling their guts. Why didn't he ask to interview her? Because, Mick answered, he knows you'd say no. That's right, she said, adding that she was going to write her own book someday. And he even writes in here that I guess she changed hotels the next day because of the writer, because of that. On a little bit further down the page, says the writer and Stevie passed each other a few times in the narrow backstage corridors of Wembley Arena. She would give him a little smile and then lower her eyes as they passed. He noted that she was tiny, overweight, and seemed a little bleary, as if she was medicated. That's another thing I want to talk about, because I feel like throughout this book, This dude feels like he has to point out all the time her weight. It's again a little bit further past this page here that I want to mention, just a turn of phrase he uses to describe her weight, which let's see, where does it say? Talking about the clothes she was wearing on stage for that tour. She wobbled uncomfortably in stacked high-heeled boots, trailing scarves, and wore metallic hair jewels in her big coiffure. Even a bit overripe in her current state, there was still something deeply alluring in her presence. Yeah, I think I looked this up. This guy's only written about one other female musician besides Stevie Nicks, and it shows. I just feel like maybe commenting so much on her weight and her age as well is a little bit disrespectful for somebody who's such an influential musician, like clearly. And I mean, it's even in this book, like how much she was doing in her 50s and 60s and up until today, obviously, because she's, you know, she's still alive and still rocking. Like, I feel like that's a little bit disrespectful. It's like, come on. There's also some things that people have pointed out in other reviews, just kind of like throwaway stuff like that the writer doesn't ever bring up or comment on or put into context, like a Halloween party where Christine showed up in blackface. That's kind of just like a throwaway bit. Another throwaway bit where it talked about how like Stevie wouldn't get into like cars where the driver was black or something. It's just like real weird things that were just thrown in there that kind of make you turn your head like, excuse me, what? And then it's literally just a throwaway line. It's really weird. Yeah, if you want to find out about Stevie Nicks, just Google it. Don't read this. It did not diminish my love for Stevie Nicks, but like I said, definitely going to be checking on biographies now to see if they're authorized. I feel like that needs to be somewhere in the beginning of the book. And I went back and checked 3 times. And it says nowhere in the front here that this is unauthorized. So it's not until the very end. So check that. That was everything I read in March. Oh, I forgot to mention April's Creepy Book Club book, which is all the way across the room. So I'll just put a picture up. It's Carpathia by Matt Forbeck, which is supposed to be a like scary, not retelling, but like a horror injected story about the aftermath of the Titanic. I didn't think it would be that difficult to get your hands on now, because obviously I didn't realize COVID-19 was going to happen when we picked this book in December of 2019. But it is a little bit difficult to get your hands on. It's probably going to be a used copy, so hopefully you can find somewhere that'll ship it. I know places like, you can find it on Amazon, but they're not shipping third-party stuff right now, obviously, because they're prioritizing the essentials. It also is available for free on audiobook though, so highly recommend that. And I think on Kindle also, so you can do like a 30-day trial and read that way if you'd like to. Really quick, I'd like to thank my creepy patron peeps for their support of my channel. Thank you guys so much. If you want to find out the perks to being a creepy patron peep yourself, you can follow that link in the description. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here or you've been lurking, subscribe, become a creepy peep today. I post videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And yeah, thank you for listening to me talk. I will talk to you guys again very soon. Until then, stay strange. Bye.